Hello, folks, and welcome to the first episode of Kings of the North, the Hannah's Val British podcast. My name's Derek Johnston, and joining me tonight is my co-host and good friend, Graeme Hannah. Graeme, how are you, mate?
Hello, Derek. All good. Not too bad. Mixed results and performances on the football front this weekend, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But no, glad to be talking all things Hamburg with you, and hopefully this venture we're kicking off will be productive, will be worthwhile, and we can get a lot of new people joining us on the journey.
Fingers crossed, mate, fingers crossed. So we'll jump right into the deep end when it comes to introductions. In terms of yourself then, bud, how long have you followed Val?
My first proper Hamburg experience, I suppose it comes in two parts. My first game was in May 2013, back in the far distant days of bothering the top half of the Bundesliga table before the long winter kicked in. But for me, the start of my relationship with HSV was on Hogmanay 2012, or New Year's Eve for our wider British audience. At that time, I was living over in Glasgow, and through some friends and people in my Rangers circle at the time, I first met a man called Marco, uh, and almost 12, 13 years later, still a very good friend and a pillar of my own Hamburg network. I know it's the same for yourself. So that conversation, that connection in a pub in Kenning Park in Glasgow, that kicked off a long-lasting friendship and was the start of me properly getting interested and involved with the club. As I say, my first trip was halfway through the next year. It was last home game of the season. I think it was actually the last game of the season. It was a 1-0 defeat to Bayer Leverkusen. The team, the club, finished seventh that season, and names such as Heiko Westermann, Raphael van der Vaart were running about the pitch wearing the router. So, from then, from being aware of names like that and players, who were very good players within the league, to where the club's been the last few years, it's been quite a roller coaster. But we're starting the podcast and we're starting the new season back in the bully, and I know we'll get on to today's performance against Gladbach, but it was very encouraging. It was nice to be waiting on the big league starting and Hamburg playing their part.
Yeah, mate, very much back where we belong, and you kind of set me off down memory lane there as well, because if memory serves, you bumped into a ginger fellow in 22C that day as well, mate, which we weren't expecting to see each other, but it was good to see you nonetheless. But in terms of that as well, obviously you've made more trips since. What's been your favourite memory from visiting Hamburg?
Before we recorded this, you sent over some notes, and you did note what's your favourite trip or your favourite memory. From a football front, I have two favourites, and I'll get on to that at the minute. But I'm fortunate that we've got the same as yourself. We've got to meet quite a lot of guys who are totally embraced in the club and in the city. It's hard for me to pinpoint an exact favourite memory. I enjoy being in the company, of our friends over there, and in the local pubs and the different local experiences. It's the same. It's the same when the Hamburg guys come to visit us in Glasgow, and being around the Rangers scene. And before we go further, me and Derek are both from a Rangers background. We're both Rangers fans. A lot of this at times will be Rangers centric. It's because of our background and our relationships, but this won't be just a Rangers Hamburg thing. Essentially, this is a British Hamburg podcast, and that's the way we want it to be. But from a personal perspective, it can't be helped. So just bear with us on that. But yes, it's a different experiences for me. On a match day, there's no beating standing at Stellingen. When the weather's not atrocious, you're outside, you're with like-minded people, you're with friends, enjoying a beer or grabbing something to eat, catching up with people you haven't seen in a while. That's part of Hamburg. It could be, it has been when the team's been struggling in the second league, or when the game's not going to be good. Yes, we want to see the team win. We want to see the team doing well, but a lot of the real stuff happens outside of the games and away from the stadium. So I have a lot of good memories in different social settings. But from a football perspective, there's two highlights that stand out. One of them was a game in February 2018. I was living and working in the Netherlands at the time, and I travelled through to Dortmund away. So obviously there's an iconic stadium there. There's the older relationship with a certain generation of Hamburg and Dortmund fans. Anyone that's regular over to the Volkspark Stadium, they'll know from seeing the guys with their kudas. It is kuda, isn't it? The waistcoats. Yeah, got that right. You'll sometimes see Dortmund patches, and you'll go, "What's that all about?" I don't know a lot about it. Maybe you know about yourself, Derek, but just from talking to some of our friends, I know there is a bit of a connection with an older generation of Dortmund. But I remember travelling through the Netherlands. Our main pivot point was at Dusseldorf, and then heading along towards Dortmund. Another one of our friends, Christian, he was in Dusseldorf. He happened to be there with work, and he was coming by the same way. So it ended up there was a group of us, and we bumped into more people travelling through on the way. So the journey itself was pleasant, meeting up with people, meeting new people, and just the whole experience. Setting foot in a new city for the first time, and then seeing just the looming presence of the stadium. It speaks for itself. From the outside, it's quite imposing. And then inside, obviously we were in the away end that day, just going up into the steps, you're in a proper football stadium. And that was great. A narrow defeat that day. It looked like, as it turned out, that was the season that not that the trapdoor opened, because it had been opened for several seasons, but that was the year that we fell through the trapdoor. The writing seemed to be on the wall. But so I suppose not from a football perspective, but from a social perspective, and experiencing Dortmund away, great atmosphere in the away end, just a really good experience overall, and one of those stadiums that you're glad to say I've been there with Hamburg. And probably a close second favourite, or a joint favourite, would be a long awaited derby win. It was my first derby. It was May of 2023. Sorry, 24. So that was good. Ironic, the derby, the Stad derby win came in a season that the team finished fourth. Ultimately, it wasn't good enough, but you always want to beat that lot. They ended up going up, but it was still a great occasion. Great to take in the derby at home. All the build up to it. I suppose the build up was a bit muted, because we had run out of room in terms of essentially getting promoted or going through the playoffs. But it was still a good occasion. Of course, you always want to win your derbies. It was a late Bobby Glatzel goal, and then I think from memory after it might have been Rice, who's now playing with Club Brugge. He missed an even later penalty in that game, but nonetheless, it was a derby win, and it was a full-time whistle in terms of the game, but it also kicked off a very good evening, celebrating the win regardless of everything else that was going on.
The moments that make the trips, mate. The moments that make the trips. Not quite the game, but the moments in the boozer after. I've had plenty of them, mate. In terms of myself, just for the listeners' sake, my love affair with Hamburg started back in 2009. I was very fortunate to join the Glaswegian Loyal Hamburg Supporters Club on a trip from Glasgow down to Manchester. It was the newly formed at that point Europa League, so the old UEFA Cup, to those of us that can remember such a thing. And it was a defeat, unfortunately, 2-1 defeat, but it was a progression in terms of the quarter final. The match was, we went through to the semis, having already took a League to Manchester. For myself, it was a very good first introduction to Hamburg in terms of the supporters. We had a bus, as I says, from Glasgow, and we were looking at around, I think, 50 or 60 of us on the bus. Quite a jolly outing was had by everyone on the bus, and we were welcomed excellently by the Haasfall support. So it really started it off for me. I've since went over to Hamburg, I think 16 times now in total. My first visit there was the year after. I went over in October of 2010 for my first home game, and was fortunate enough to see late winners against Kaiserslautern that day, with the goals coming from Choupo-Moting and Gojko Kacha. So quite a while back. As I said, been very fortunate to visit the city on numerous occasions. Favourite memory though, I'll play the safe one just in case the wife dares to listen to my dulcet tones and say that it would be getting engaged in front of the Rat House. But to be fair, that brought about a great weekend, and also seen us enjoy a good weekend. I actually think, if memory serves me, it was the same weekend. It was the Leverkusen weekend that we get engaged. But I'm a wee bit vague on that because the joys, mate. I'm now a 33-year-old dad of a near 4-year-old who had a brain like mush most days. But yeah, that's me in terms of Haasfall and how I got involved in the fan scene and making regular trips. Been very fortunate, just as you've said yourself, mate, to make some friends for life. Have a German family almost, pretty much, in terms of my friends that I can call upon, and some of them I speak to on a daily basis. So, aye, it's a way of life more than anything else.
Just while we're going down memory lane and recalling some of our first memories, I was actually at the Celtic game in 2009, but on that occasion, I don't know, I don't remember meeting any Hamburg fans in particular. I don't remember, I remember going to the game. You'll know yourself, there was a march, a cordio from the Glaswegian bar. I vaguely remember being in the pub for a short while and then making the walk through. I remember being quite impressed with the away end that night, and it was Marcus Berg who scored that night. Yes, but I had no real. I was living in Glasgow at university at the time, but I don't remember particularly meeting anyone. So at that stage, that was just going to the game. So all the good stuff came thereafter, and I'm very glad for it.
Yeah, so that was my second match. I had the City game and then the Celtic game before I eventually, in the October, made the trip over to Hamburg itself and got a wee trip in. That was back in the days where you had to fly to Bremen and then get the train up. So that was a fun trip, especially because it was a Friday Sunday shoot and we were going to Bremen Airport at 3 o'clock on a Saturday into Sunday. So it was a very tough shift, mate, after being in the Reaper band for the best part of 48 hours. But no, very much as we've said, mate, great memories, great times, and to be fair, looking forward to ones to come in the future, even with ourselves, mate, trying our best to plan a wee trip to Cologne this season together, so that would be nice, and I'm also hoping to get a nice wee trip in towards the end of the season as well, over to Hamburg itself. But in terms of the season, kind of rushed ahead a wee bit there and gave some of the games away. However, let's preview the season that we've got in front of us now. So obviously, first and foremost, we are finally back where we belong in the Bundesliga itself. However, we're going to look at the transfers first of all. So, bit of discussion on the squad in terms of ins and outs, and then we'll give our thoughts in terms of how the squad currently looks. I'm just going to list the players in first of all, and I'm going in reverse order. So this is based on the most recent players signed, all the way back down to those who came in at the start of the window. So we've had Georgi Kulishevsky. I have absolutely butchered that, but we'll move. A right back on loan from Shakhtar Donetsk, who was also our friends in Copenhagen. So I'm looking forward to seeing Georgie. I think we'll just stick with Georgie in future for me, mate. We've also brought in Mohamed Omari, a centre back from Rennes, on loan, and Daniel Perez, a goalkeeper from the club in München who shan't be named. Personally, I prefer to call them FC Hollywood. They are what they are. Also on loan. Let's just hope he's better than the last goalkeeper we had from Bayern, because, yes, everybody doesn't want to remember Sven Ulreich. Yusuf Poulsen as well has come in, a striker who joined us from Rasenballsport Leipzig, and that was a €1 million deal on a 2-year deal. We then also had Nicolas Capaldo, a centre mid from RB Salzburg, come in. That one was for around €4 million, with his contract length being undisclosed. Brian Felipe made the step up to the bully with us from the second league. He's a striker who was signed from Eintracht Braunschweig in a €2.5 million deal on a 4-year contract. Fernando Dix is a young goalkeeper from RB Leipzig as well, who's a free transfer. Again, his contract length hasn't been disclosed. Jordan Taringva comes in, a centre-back from Ghent. He's a free transfer, again with his contract length undisclosed. And finally we had Nico Remberg, a holding midfielder from Holstein Kiel, in a €2 million deal, again with his contract length undisclosed. In terms of players in, mate, is there any for you that stick out personally that you're really looking forward to seeing?
I wasn't sure about Poulsen when it became clear that the deal was happening, that it was on. But he has some pedigree and he can still play. You're looking at Bobby Glatzel making the step up as well, but I would be looking at Poulsen to make an impact. I also like the look of Capaldo today. I think he has a bit about him. He was busy in the game against Gladbach. You could see early on he seems to have a work ethic about him. He was biting into tackles and certainly trying to regain the ball as well. With that reported €4 million fee coming in from Salzburg, you're going to be looking at getting a return there, and hopefully the first impressions are just a sign of what's to come. So, to be honest, I don't know a lot about too many of the players, familiar with Poulsen over the years. Most of the rest, I'm not knowledgeable about, to be honest. But in glimpses today, I liked what I saw. More important than individuals coming in, will be what the team does as a unit. I know we're going to specifically address the first game of the season against Gladbach, but I was very encouraged with what I saw, and we'll leave that for a moment before we get right into it. But there's been a decent bit of money spent there in relative terms. It'll be interesting over the next week to see if any more players come in and how it looks with the late start to the league. Compared to some other leagues where you get an idea of how it's going over the first few weeks, and maybe if you need another player or two in a certain position, it's more or less not the case in Germany in the Bundesliga. So we'll have more of an idea on the incoming players, over the next few weeks. By early September, certainly by late September, we'll have an idea of the first few weeks of the season, but hopefully as many as possible can hit the ground running.
Yeah, mate, absolutely. For me, to be fair, I'm similar to yourself, Capaldo, because he's a marquee signing, really, isn't he, in terms of that transfer fee that's rumoured to have been paid for him. But as well as that, I'm quite impressed by how the club are going about building a core for stepping up. Paldo replacing Ludo Rice. You've also seen, obviously, as you just said there, Yusuf Poulsen come in. Poulsen, for me, is that experienced striker that basically replaces Selke, and just brings about maybe something different as well. But for all his experience for me is, I always see him more as somebody who is capable of being that striker that plays off the wing and comes inside rather than always being your out and out number 9. But I'm looking forward to seeing him, because certainly today as well, and the cameo that he has for 20 minutes or so, he was very much a focal point in the attack. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of it. The one that really caught my eye though is Jordan Torreira, and that's because I remember him as a young kid when he was coming through at Hertha, and he looked as if he could be a strong player who went on and had a great career. At that time, he looked like being somebody who would be a German international. He's since went on to become a Nigerian international due to his Nigerian citizenship. However, he goes for €5 million to Ghent, and then we get him on a free. So there's definitely a pedigree there, and it's really it's one of the ones where it's, can you get him back to the heights that he's been at before? And I'm really looking forward to seeing how he does. I thought today as well, it was pretty strong in terms of strong in the tackle, willing to defend, and for me, we've not seen enough of that in terms of Haasfeld defenders in the last 5-6 years. So hopefully that continues. Now just going to go through the list of players out, and first of all with that, I'm going to go basically in the reverse of the last lot. We'll go to the freedom of contract players who mostly were released in early June. Some of these players as well were more the second team players than actual first team players, but we'll run through the list that we got anyway. So we had Valon Zumberia, a centre back who's still unattached just now. Tom Miko, a legendary goalkeeper at the club for everything he'd done. He also, I believe, stepped into a coaching role at some point last season. So Miko has retired now, and I'm sure he goes with well wishes of everyone at Haasfall. I doubt that he'll be someone who's unwelcome at the stadium moving forward. Louis Seifert, also a defender, moved on to Elversberg. He was again one of these ones where he was a younger player though and played mostly with the second team. Milad Nedad, is another one who I have just butchered name-wise, but he was a centre mid who's went to Wayne, Vies and Baden. Again, a second team player. Nico Oliveira, left back who made appearances last season, went to Jan Regensburg on a freedom of contract, as well as Lucas Perrin, a centre back who is now at Sporting Gijón. And lastly, the man that I've mentioned not too long ago, Davy Selke, he is now playing in Turkey with Başakşehir. So
Did you see his goal last week, by the way?
I did not, mate. I did not. Has he done a thing? As a kid?
Absolutely. A worldie. He picks up the ball round about the halfway line, and he ended up, I guess, past 2 or 3 players around the keeper, and struck it home. So if we're saying there that Poulsen is the replacement for Davy Selke, we can only hope that then Poulsen has a euphoric celebration to look forward to at the end of the season, to replicate Selke in that famous night against Ulm, where it looked like he was on something. He certainly enjoyed his time on the pitch and then the party after it. So yeah, Poulsen's got big shoes to fill there. But yeah, Davies hitting the goals already in Istanbul. So good luck to him.
Good on him. He's certainly a player.
What a job he done last season, by the way. I remember speaking to one of our mutual friends, a brief remark about him and not really having any expectations, but he really played his part, and I think it was acknowledged in terms of the role that he played. So well done, Big Davy.
Oh, absolutely, mate, absolutely. At the end of the day, he steps in and fills the void when Glasgow gets injured. And from being somebody that everybody was like, he's another one of these players who's broken down and it's a typical Haas foul signing. As you says, mate, at the end of the season, who's the guy that's got you where you've went? Big Davy. Big Davy with his goals. Down bits across the season. I was at the Braunschweig game last season. No, I wasn't at the Braunschweig game last season. I was at the Braunschweig game the season before, and he played that day, and he looked very much a player that was playing within himself, and then just seemed to grow. Seeing him at the match that was over for last season, I can't even remember the home game that I was at now. But when I seen him, he very much looked like the leader of the team, and I think that showed across the season as well. He scored important goals at important times, and he definitely somebody as well that I wish all the best to. Again, mate, in terms of transfers out, still got a fair bit of a list here. We've already mentioned the one that's broke my heart in terms of Ludo Rice. Ludo also unfortunately came to play our first love in Rangers just this week in a Champions League tie, but before that he came over to play in a friendly, and I was fortunate enough to just by chance be in the same hotel as Brugge that night, and was very tempted to be that inner child and go up and ask him for a photo, but I managed to control myself enough not to, sadly.
You should have had a word.
I had a word with Christo Tzolis in a lift because I was going back up the stairs for breakfast to the room, and just by chance he was in the lift at the same time as us, and I said to him, I'm a Haas Val fan as well as a Rangers fan. I says, tell Ludo I'm looking for him, and he started laughing, but unfortunately I never then bumped into them after. On that note, Simon Mignolet, random from Hamburg pod, right? But Simon Mignolet is an absolute unit when you see that guy in the flesh. Couldn't believe him, and I'm not exactly a wee guy myself, mate, but he's an absolute unit. So Ludo Rice departed us for €6 million, it's believed, in terms of the fee. As well as Tom Sani, a young striker who's went to SV Wacker Burgerhausen for €200,000, as well as Andres Nemeth, who's went to Puskás FC Academy. I wonder if they rigged the Puskás award at any point, but that was for 350 grand. Matthew Rab. This is one for me as well, actually, that's kind of sticks in my throat a wee bit, because I always thought Matthew Rab was a very competent goalkeeper for HSV. So he's moved on to Union Berlin for 350 grand. I assume that's to be one of these second/third choice goalkeepers, which if it is, I would be really disappointed to see, because I think there's a quality goalkeeper in there. If you could just work on getting it out of him all the time. Anse Suhonen has went on loan, our young centre mid, to Osters in Sweden as well until December 2025. So a wee 6-month loan deal to hopefully get him over his fitness concerns and playing regularly. I dare say with a view that he either comes back if there's a place for him, or he extends that loan, or maybe even goes elsewhere in a higher league for a wee 6 months elsewhere potentially. Lucas Pereba, again, for me, I actually thought he more than played his part in the promotion. Pereba always came in at centre mid and done a job for us. He's went to Elversberg on loan until the end of the season. And just this week, Sebastian Schonlau, ex-Capitan, has departed the club to Vancouver Whitecaps for 125 grand. So fair amount of outs there as well as ins, mate. In terms of the squad overall, what would you say? What's your opinion on the squad overall, mate? How do you think it sits just now?
In terms of, it can be hard to gauge. The season finished off relatively well. Objective achieved in terms of getting out of the league. It was very HSV in terms of not winning the league in the end. But you can kind of forgive that with the elation and the high point of the celebrations against Ulm. Getting fired up after that was always going to be difficult. You're coming into the Bundesliga, a squad that has largely not played there before. Obviously, the club is back, but the team as such isn't back. It's very much a step up for the team. There are several individuals in the team who will be able to play at this level, but overall, it is going to be tough. Everything I'm reading and wee bits I'm hearing from friends at the minute, the expectations are where they should be. Personally, I think the objective has to be just to stay in the league. Anything else, 15th up would be great. It would be good to see some kind of momentum, some kind of progress, but you just don't want to be languishing in those relegation spots or hovering around, the playoff. I mean, that dread coming, towards next spring. That's what we want to avoid. I hadn't really seen any of the team in pre-season. I just saw brief clips of the cup game against Pirmessens last week. That was typical Pokal for HSV, struggling against lower league opposition. And you're kind of going, oh no, here we go again. That one, it was a case of getting out of jail. But in terms of starting as the team means to go on, I really hope that today against Gladbach was a statement of intent. And the signings we've discussed, you've given a bit more background on the players that have come in already after just one game. A couple have made an impact. I also read during the week one of the prominent English language Hamburg accounts on Twitter mentioned about Laszlo Benes, and if he has any regrets at being too hasty to get back into the Bundesliga himself. He joins Union Berlin last summer, and now he's off to play at Kayserispor in Turkey. Benes certainly was a good player when I was watching him. I liked him with Hamburg, Would have liked him in the current squad. I'm not sure if there's anything else in the background or anything that had went on there. But for me, it's a pity that he's not one that the team will be able to call upon. But he's went his own way now. So a decent start after the first game. The preparations will now quickly turn to a very early stat derby of the season coming up next week. A win is all that matters there. But if we can move on to hopes for the campaign, Derek, would you agree that it needs to be just to stay in the league for 15th position or hopefully above?
Yeah, mate, absolutely. For me, this season is quite simply about not being a yo-yo club, because I think over the last few years we've seen certain clubs be that between Erste Liga and Zweite Liga, so we really need to just go back in and maintain that we're a Bundesliga club, and then for me, season 2 becomes the can we dream of a European push again, because especially now with the Conference League and things like that, I know through our own friends as well, mate, that every one of them loves coming on trips with Rangers, but more than anything else, they yearn for the days of seeing their own team back at that level, and that's for me where I would love to see Hasfeld get to. I wouldn't even say longer term. I think it's achievable if you look at Heidenheim. It's achievable to go into the Conference League in year 1 or year 2, as the team that gets promoted to the Bundesliga. So let's just see how it plays out this season. I'm all for us being 14th or 15th, mate, and just being that team that says we've done enough. We don't need to worry. The old Tony Pulis shout here in Britain of just get your 40 points. That's where I kind of want us to be, is just be that team that's comfortable, knows it's not going to be in a dogfight, and then we can look at really going for it season 2.
Well, it's great. It's great to be off the mark already. Day one, Gladbach away, getting a result. It's not guaranteed at all. I know we're maybe getting ahead of ourselves here in terms of the schedule we had, but it should have been a win. But for the right back getting a wee bit ahead of himself and sticking the ball in the net, it was going in anyway. I thought it was going to be typical, after that to lose the game, which would have been harsh. I thought it was a typical Bundesliga game, kind of the proverbial boxing match. End to end, started well, finished well. In between, not so much on the ropes, but certainly Gladbach had the initiative at times. There was plenty to be encouraged by. Should have won it at the end, but clean sheet and you have a point on the board, and it's a case of looking forward with positivity to the next game. So I got to see a good part of the game while I was looking after my son, and he was running about in the house earlier. But from what I could catch, I think there was plenty to look forward to. We mentioned earlier about some of the new signings that showed up, with Poulsen coming on at the end, Dumpe as well. And this is a big season for him. He's around 30 now. He's played most of his career, at a lower level, you would say, and now he's got his Bundesliga chance. He still retains significant pace. He's still got a big part to play. Whether he can play every week or not remains to be seen. But even as an impact player, what an option he will be. But I'm very encouraged by what I saw today. I thought the demeanour of the team, there was purpose about the play. There was intent, and yeah, it was good. I thought it was a solid opening day performance, and I hope it just gets better.
Yeah, mate, absolutely. For me, today's performance, the key thing I wanted to see was what we got to see, to be fair. A team that looked defensively set and capable of competing, and then just tried to grow into the game, and I think that's exactly what we've seen play out. I really liked that Merlin's decided we're going to go 3-4-3 and be a bit of a hybrid within that as well. I think you'll see us play a box sometimes, you'll see us play a diamond in terms of that midfield four. And obviously, against the better teams, it won't be a back three, it'll be a back five. You'll pull people in and you'll get that defensive solidity, 5-4-1, and just come and break us down. But that's the reality of being the team that's spent as long as we have in the Vita You really need to go in this season and whilst you're a big club yourself, you kind of need to respect that you've been away from the top table for too long and you need to build your way back in. And I thought today was a great signal of intent that way in terms of showing a defensive soundness to then give you a platform for that late push. And as you rightly said, mate, if it's not for Miko Bronsis, I don't know. I can't stand that wee guy personally, but it's just me. What's the need? Let the ball get there. You're a right back. A striker's just get the flick. No, it wasn't. I don't even think it was Poulsen. I think it comes off somebody else. But just read the moment of the game, because if he doesn't get involved, it's a goal, and you're coming away on match day one going 3 points on the board. Excellent. Because we know that the next few games, and we're going to speak about that very soon, mate, but we know the next few games it's a tough schedule and it'll be a test in certain ones, so it could have been even better today, and that's that wee typical hash foul part of you in you as well, where you go, good, but it could have been great. So I'm going to ask you as well, mate, in terms of the match today, who was your man of the match personally?
Particularly in the first half, like I said earlier, I liked Capaldo. I liked his presence. Maybe for 10 minutes or so in the second half, my eyes were elsewhere, so I wouldn't be able to give a definite man of the match, if you like, because I didn't have full concentration on the full game. But I would just reiterating what we have discussed. There was 2 or 3 new players. You mentioned Terrinriga. He has something about him. I like Capaldo. Obviously, Poulsen was just on at the end, but he had an impact at the end of the game, as did Dumpy. So that's encouraging. So I wouldn't sort of name a man of the match from my perspective, because I didn't properly see the full game.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to surprise listeners of old who previously have listened to us on the Rangers fan network, Heart and Hand, mate, where we used to do the Hashval Hangover. I am going to say Daniel Hoyer Fernandez, and you'll probably sit there yourself and go, Derek, you hypocritical man. However, today he was everything I don't normally see him being as a goalkeeper. He was sound, he really led the team, he barked at people, he came up with big moments himself in terms of saves, and I thought he was excellent today, and I really, really hope we're going to see more of it, and I hope that's what Perez is going to be from Bayern, that one that's just in the background, pushing him, making him know he's behind me and he wants in, and you really see Hoyer Fernandez step up, because people have all, like, you know yourself in terms of our own group of friends over in Hamburg, we've always had that argument when it comes to goalkeepers, and they would normally have a laugh and say about Rangers goalkeepers being rotten at certain times. West Fodry and went and played the Premier League. I've not seen any Hamburg goalkeepers play in the Premier League personally. But that's the wee part for me. Just can we see somebody go and push themselves and show, no, I deserve to be here and I'm staying here and so is my club, because that will make the biggest difference for us moving forward.
Particularly with Perez coming in, I thought that it was good to see Javier Fernandez, with his statement of intent today, because he was solid. Just looking on the FotMob app as we're speaking there, he had an 8.1 rating and was therefore the highest rated Hamburg player today. So they're singing off the same hymn sheet with you. There is a good goalkeeper in Fernandez. You don't always see it. Can he be more consistent? Can he improve his game? Can he outshine Perez and hold on to the gloves, for the duration? That would be nice to see. It would be good. He was obviously given his chance today, and he took it. So I would fully expect to see Javier Fernandez line up next week for the derby.
Yeah, mate, yeah, and that's exactly where we're coming next. Just a run through, first of all, of the next 4 fixtures. So in terms of the podcast as well, our plan is to try and do a monthly show, and roughly that will mean that it will be around every 5 games or so that we look to basically review what we've seen, and we'll discuss the most recent game in a bit more detail with that, obviously. However, that's kind of what we're going to look to do with the shows. We'll also look to have different guests on throughout as well. We'll invite people on that are fellow British as followers, but we'll also have some of our good friends from Hamburg coming on as well at different points, and kind of a similar format to that we followed elsewhere. But the next 4 games, as you said, mate, we've got one of the bigger ones next week. In terms of how our season starts, you can't ask for better than starting against your noisy neighbours on a Friday evening. And that's exactly what we've got on the 29th of August with in terms of British summertime, it's a 7:30 kickoff. It'll also be streamed live on BBC iPlayer, so no reason not to tune in for anyone listening, because from personal experience, Graeme, you've done a home game. When it comes to the Stat Derby, I've not done a home game, but I have done the away game, and they're not quite our level of derby in terms of the madness as an Old Firm game. However, the Stat Derby is one that matters as well, and both teams will certainly be up for it, especially with the year there where Polly we're in the league and now we're joining them and looking to remind them of what colour Hamburg really is.
Well, it's a case of the big city club against the cult club from the district. It will be good to have that element of one-upmanship back, and the rivalry is very much back on this season. What better way to get your first win of the season, first home game of the season, especially after today. Everyone's going to be up for it. Suppose they got their result against Dortmund as well, but it should be a cracker. I wish I was going to it.
Okay.
Next Friday evening. The night games speak for themselves. Anyone who's familiar would do like our Saturday afternoon kickoffs, the traditional game. But in terms of the big games, the derbies and other high profile games, won't quite be under the lights as such. But yeah, Friday night, nearly everyone's finished work or off for the weekend. That will be lively. That's very much one to look forward to. As we discussed earlier, my experience of the derby was great at the end of the season when there was nothing to play for in the bigger sense. But bragging rights are on the line, a chance to make momentum. But at the start of the season, the first home game, fantastic. Really looking forward to that. And it's a chance for momentum. It's also important because of the game that comes after it, when we all need to, try and put the feelings of PTSD aside, for previous doings that have happened at the Bayern Munich stadium. We all remember seeing, goals and goals and goals. Let's hope that doesn't happen. But I watched the game against Leipzig there on Friday night, and they were electric going forward. They were relentless. They were looking like a Bayern Munich team that's we've all seen before. Realistically, nobody's expecting anything there. Absolutely anything would be a bonus. Not that you can't get at them, you can, but they're formidable at the other end. So I don't really know if I can say any more on that. That game obviously comes after the international break, and then after the trip to Bavaria comes a home game against Heidenheim, followed by Union Berlin on the Sunday afternoon, the 28th of September. So there's 1 point on the board already. If we're looking at the next 4 fixtures, of course you're looking to win on Friday. A draw wouldn't be the end of the world, but you want to win. A win should be the aim. It's achievable. It's doable. So I'm looking at those fixtures. Of course you would like 6 points from the 2 home games, but Derek, if I said to you, in terms of an aim, and I know we're wanting as many points as possible, but if I'm saying to you, you can get 4 points from the 2 home games, take that in isolation, with adding to the point today, 5 points from the first 5 games. Do you think that's okay, or should we be looking to pick up an extra point in Berlin?
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think we could maybe, depending on how Union are going at that point, I think we could maybe sneak something there. But certainly next week, no two ways about it. Bragging rights in the line. Let's go and slap the political movement down a peg and remind them of who runs the city at the end of the day. Get the 4 points on the board at that point. FC Hollywood will be the old favourite, back of the couch watching the game effort on a Saturday night, mate. I don't expect much else. For all Vincent Kompany will play up to Haasfeld being the club that brought him to Germany in the first place and gave him his big chance to get out of Anderlecht before he flew off in the night to Manchester City. I don't think he'll be too kind to us that night, so I don't expect too much, to be fair, on the 13th of September. But the Heidenheim game on the 20th, that one for me will be an interesting game, because I, as you know, mate, come from a coaching background, and Frank Schmidt's somebody who I have always really admired, because he sets teams up that are, first and foremost, teams that graft for each other. They're hard to beat, but they also love a fight, and I think that will be a really interesting test of where we're at, especially the fourth game. It'll give you a right good idea what Haasfall are going to be at that stage as well. The window's closed, so you know the squad's set by then. But no, certainly good games to come. That Union Berlin game, as you said, then moves to the Sunday. So we've got that balance as well with Friday, Saturday, Sunday football across the 4 games, and they're all, for me, they're all different trips to look forward to, and different games to look forward to. So it'll certainly be an interesting month ahead in September.
Yeah, and the home form will be crucial. If Hamburg are going to stay up, it will be because of putting points on the board. There has to be an element of consistency, particularly in the home games. If you can get that win next Friday night, that's the first win ticked off, then you're obviously one game at a time and all that, but you're Heidenheim, it maybe doesn't have as much pressure, to be, we need to win this second home game. So that will be crucial. And certainly in, as many of half of the home games, if you can't win them, let's not lose them. All points will be crucial. You mentioned that 40 points total. It'll be very important, getting to basically getting the points on the board and, so that by the time the league restarts in January, that it's not a case of where are the points going to come from. It's a case of how many more are required, how many more can be secured. You don't want to be going to the back of September still needing a first win, but we'll see what unfolds. Today was an encouraging start, but it is just the first game. As you say, by the time the Heidenheim and Union Berlin games come around, transfer window's closed, the squad's set, and we'll have an idea of how the team's playing, how it's looking at home. And, even as much as getting a result in the Bayern game will be a tall order, wouldn't it be great, to see a performance, to be proud of, and some optimism. We don't want that to be, a heavy defeat as has happened in years gone by. But first of all, let's look forward to next Friday and hopefully 3 points to follow.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. That's another one I would say is something. It was kind of my wee mate Schmidty that put it in my head. When we were talking a couple of days ago, he said that each point will be a party, basically in Hamburg, and it made me start to think of trips to Munich, trips to Dortmund, even top end. You've got some pretty tough games in the league. What do you think in terms of on the road? Do you think that will be where it's harder to come by, those proverbial tough away days?
Well, you would think so, but stranger things have happened. What if all the good stuff comes on the road and it turns out that the team's too open or too soft at home? We don't know. But just looking the last couple of seasons, 32 and 33 points have been enough for 15th position. So you've already won on the board. So if you're talking 30 points, roughly 30 points would be enough. Obviously 40 is what you want to aim for. 40 would almost certainly secure a place for the following season. But yeah, especially the first couple of months. If you have 2 or 3 wins there, fantastic. Which means you're not, stuck to the bottom and there's an early issue as if, where are the points coming from? Stranded already. We don't want that to be the case. I'm going to say it's not going to be the case. I think there will be points picked up in the first few weeks. But there will be tough weeks. There will be back-to-back defeats here and there. Ultimately, it's about how the team progresses and what we see on the pitch. The first few weeks, as we've said there, Derek, will give us an indication of what is to come. Give us, by all means, celebrate every point. Just give us a win next Friday. It would be excellent. First 2 games, 4 points. That would be a real solid start. As you did mention, from a British and Irish perspective, there will be much more visibility of the games this season. Most people listening will know that there were ways and means to see most of the games, but a bit of common sense has prevailed in some quarters in terms of the TV deal for the UK and Ireland. A lot of people will be familiar that on a Friday night the games are going out on BBC iPlayer, on the Bundesliga YouTube channel, on the Overlap YouTube channel, and on Mark Goldbridge's That's Football channel, which I just don't understand in the slightest. I get that it's about exposing people and young people to the Bundesliga, opening up a new audience. But if you asked any German football fan from the UK to pick, a YouTube channel that's probably the least suited, it would be Goldbridge's channel. On social media during the week, I basically put across my point in that way. Also on LinkedIn, obviously he was milking it. People were congratulating Brent on the breakthrough, and from him, from a commercial perspective, of course it's great in terms of the deal, and it's more exposure for him and his YouTube channel. There was a video circulating from about 4 years ago when he was slating some player for taking a move to the Bundesliga. Everything that German football stands for is anathema to what he's about. And, typical transfer junkie. It's all about players. Watching games from a room in a house. How can you marry that up with German football? German football is all about fan culture, the authenticity, fans having a say in the game, fans having that ownership. We've seen in recent seasons how German football supporters reverse deals that have been done by the league. The equity deal from the last couple of seasons, that was kicked into touch because of the football fans, because of supporter activism, because of the role that fans play in the game, what they mean to clubs, and just their ownership. And how does that translate to a YouTube channel hosted by Mark Goldbridge? It doesn't make sense. So there's a bit of a rant, but I'm sure you agree with the consensus of what I'm saying. Yes, it will get more eyes on German football, but how can he explain what the game's about, what it means to people over there? It just doesn't make sense to me. I tuned in, I put on his channel on Friday night for a couple of minutes. He's doing the watch along, and I'm just going, that's not for me. It's not supposed to be for me at the same time. I'm 37 and I'm pushing towards 40. It's for teenagers and maybe a younger demographic. But, there would be as well with, I don't understand. If you do your homework, he's not the man you want to be selling your game. Do the league care? The Bundesliga International really care? Or is it just about numbers? Is it just about eyes on the game? I know what I think for that. So there we go, rant over, but I'm sure and I hope a lot of people get where I'm coming from. The Friday night games are available on iPlayer and the Bundesliga channel. Saturday games stay with Sky, and the Sunday games are up for grabs individually. I think it's like £2.50 or something like that from Amazon. Did you see what it was for today's game?
Yeah, mate, yeah. I'm not sure of the pay-per-view because as we are currently in a Keir Starmer-led Britain, I tend to go on holidays every now and then these days when I watch certain things. I decided I was taking a holiday and watching the DAZN stream instead today. But yeah, definitely, in terms of your rant as well, mate, I would say this is a safe space, mate. It's exactly why we decided to finally push the button and doing this show. Because let's be honest, German football and all that makes it great shouldn't be ruined by YouTubers who don't have a clue or a care for it. That's as far as I'll go, mind you, 'cause never know, he might come for me 'cause I'm the ginger guy out of the two of us.
And what I would say is, I would, if Goldbridge happens to stumble upon this podcast, I would happily give him the challenge of being worthy of, selling German football for what it is, and for why a lot of us in the UK and Ireland are so fond of it. I'm not too sure how good of a job that he'll do, but you've got the rights, you've got the contract. Let's see what you can do for it in the right way. But I don't know. We can maybe revisit that one at a later date. But regardless, it's good that more people will be able to see Hamburg games first and foremost. I'm sure there will be, starting on Friday. Hamburg command a huge TV audience. One of the best supported clubs in Germany. The league are very happy that Hamburg are back. Cologne are back, two of the traditional clubs in Germany, and that will be reflected, Derek, in the TV choices throughout the season, whether it across the weekends. So it'll be interesting to see, but the more the merrier, certainly on free to air TV for fans to watch.
No, absolutely, mate, absolutely. Good to see Terrestrial picking important football back up again. Be it obviously the European Cup deal that they've got these days as well makes it more accessible for people, and to be fair as well, that me with the Sunday stuff, at least it's Amazon Prime, because they tend to actually do football coverage quite well, so I would expect that it'll be the international feed and you'll get the decent commentators that you get from the Bundesliga feeds anyway. But hopefully we've been primed them, maybe put a wee bit of, invest the money back in basically for the pay-per-views, and give you a bit of a package before it, rather than just being the standard, oh, here's the game, the commentator, that we've got accustomed to over the last few years. Now, obviously, Graeme, this has been a good hour's chat, mate, and always thoroughly enjoyable. But first of all, mate, I would just like to thank yourself for joining me on what is a maiden voyage for us here at Kings of the North. Couldn't do it without you, mate. Wouldn't want to do it without you either. That's how it took us a bit of time to push the button on it, because I think I asked the question at some point last season and the two of us we weren't fully sure on it. But really good to be in the seat with you, mate, and let's hope it's a season worth documenting as well.
Yes, I hope so, and it's good to get talking all things Haasval, because both of us, as with other people who will be listening, we're a bit older now. We've got families. We don't get over as often as we like, or as often as we would like to, regardless. So it's always good to talk Hamburg and to connect with other people. So I hope, as much as Rangers is our priority and Rangers is our background and our main network, and a shared bond or whatever between us, we do want to open the net out. It is a Hamburg podcast for talking about the club. So if anybody's listening and would like to come along with us, please do. Please get in contact. Essentially, we want to talk about the club and the city and your experiences. And I would like to push different information and clips and stuff on our socials. So we'll try and do that as well, and keep people informed as much as possible, and maybe share a few hot takes of our own along the way. But yeah, hopefully we can build something productive, and we can be as consistent as possible. And we would like as many people as possible to join us.